I'd like to introduce firstly is Ed Hertel. Ed Hertel. You know, I asked him how to pronounce that, and I got two different answers. So I'll introduce Ed first. And Ed, of course, wrote the illegal guidebook that everybody knows and loves, and then he graciously donated it and put it online so that everybody has free access to it, which is so awesome. I use it all the time. It's like the chip guide. Then Gene, we don't have enough time to go through all of Gene's accolades. Everybody knows who Gene is, and a poker manager for the Palms and a poker expert, and he's also a Hall of Fame member, and recently the Greg Susong Memorial Award winner this year. Huh? Yeah. Everybody else voted for you then. But Gene also does something very important and something that I really enjoy. For those of you that are on the chipboard, he put something out called the Illegal of the Day. And these things are just so in-depth and so full of information. They document so many illegal chips that we are yearning for. I personally look forward to all the Illinois ones, but we enjoy them all. They're just packed full of photos and manufacturer records and everything else. And hopefully we'll get a piece of that today. So I won't keep your time. Ed and Gene.
Ed's probably one of the earliest chronicles of getting stuff on the web so everybody could read it about illegals in our hobby. I know most of you have seen his site, and he's working on it. You have to excuse me. I had this thing taken off my voice box a year and a half ago, and it comes and going. I think it's going today. And Ed's also half horse from something else. I see Paul and Paul Benner stand up. He wrote a hell of an article for your last issue about Jeffersonville, Indiana. Okay, Ed, I'm going to turn it to you and see where we go with this PowerPoint.
All right. Thanks, Gene. I decided this year, we talked about what we would do, and I know one of the questions we always get is how do you research illegals? And that's the second part of this presentation, but I thought I would start the first part with something that Gene knows a little about, and that was our Newport, Kentucky. I'm going to do kind of a decade by decade run through some of the illegal gambling histories, and Gene can pepper us with all of that he knows, which I think is quite a bit. But so let's just start. Newport, Kentucky. The one thing, the two most important areas, Newport and Covington, they're actually Newport on the east, Covington to the west. And one of the important things about this is there's a river that cuts it, and that's actually a county line. So that played an important role in how these clubs were managed by the different groups. And please.
That picture he's showing you after the convention, I'm going to upload a picture that most of you probably never seen. Damn it. Anyhow, it's that picture, but it's only Newport, and it was taken in an electrical storm.
Neat. Okay, as most of the illegal gambling, a lot of the power and the money and where these groups got their start was through Prohibition. They ran a lot of the illegal booze. I love this. This is actually a picture from Newport, 1922, and it's a World War I tank running over some homemade stills in Newport. I just thought that was kind of a neat picture. But the main group, the Cleveland Syndicate that ran the Newport area, was run by Mo Dowlitz. He was a bootlegger, made a lot of his money in Cleveland, and he's the father of Las Vegas, and as well as other things. Sam Tucker is the man responsible for his logistics in the Cleveland Syndicate. Louis Rothkopf Rothkopf. He was an expert moonshiner who ran a bunch of the stills, and what he would do is he would go across the country and set up stills, and that would be their supply for most of their clubs. And this is really where they got all their money. Was they started with this, and once you get the money, you get the power, and that's how they ended up taking over most of this area. And then Morris Kleinman was the fourth one of the Cleveland Syndicate heads, and he was a logistics guy. Did you want to talk?
Newport was an open city. And in New York's crime family was in there also, Meyer Lansky. He had two clubs, the Yorkshire and the Merchants Club. And it was an open city. And Mo Dalitz and Meyer, what they always said was there's enough for everybody. Except sometimes they wanted a little more, which they burned Beverly Hills to get. So, but actually, New York was in there also.
So let's go kind of decade through decade. As most of the action, Newport starts in the 1930s, and this is a time when the Cleveland Syndicate was coming in and starting to take over. But we have a bunch of these kind of these local moonshiners. One of them, Peter Schmidt, I think I talked about him at length last year, so I'm not going to go through that again. But he was a bootlegger who started the Glen Hotel and turned it into a casino. And then he expanded into the Glen Rendezvous, which was extremely popular. And of course, what happens when you get popular is the syndicate comes in and says that they want a piece of that action. And Peter just would have no part of it at all. So he held out, but under intense pressure, he was finally forced to sign the club over in 1935. Yeah, and then what he did is he goes down the street and he opens the Beverly Hills Club a year later. And again, it's hugely popular. The club, or the syndicate comes in, they want it. He says no, and it mysteriously burns down one night. And it doesn't take him long, but Schmidt rebuilds and he turns to the Beverly Hills Country Club. And again, the syndicate comes in, they want the club. He refuses, but knowing that he's not going to win this fight, he ends up signing it over a year later in 1937. So it's just one of the tactics that the syndicate used was pretty much their way or no way. So it's Peter Schmidt. I think he was a little bit nuts. He's a guy who stood up, and no matter what happened, they burned his place down. They would harass him. He still held out. But
Red Masterson, who run the Merchants Club, is the guy that burned this down. And the caretaker's daughter was killed in the fire. It was in the newspaper. There's an article that states that Red had stopped by a gas station and put gas in a can, and somebody asked Red what he was going to do with the gas, and he said, read the paper in the morning. Got burned.
another big club, the Lookout House, that plays an important role in the syndicate's possessions. It was owned officially by Jimmy Brinks. It was a big place, and as what I've been told, it had a bunch of catacombs below it from the old Underground Railroad that was used to, smuggle all sorts of things.
Including the slaves.
Well, yeah, but now during this time they were, booze and everything else. Here's an inside shot of the club. This is kind of just I'm just amazed at how these clubs were actually showrooms and a legitimate place in the front. It's a large building. It had a bar, had a restaurant. The casino's on the second floor. but yeah, I just love the look of these places. 1938, Jimmy Brinks, he's arrested on 45 counts of gambling. 2 grand jury witnesses, the only 2 were beaten and later refused to testify. And the case was dropped, and that's just kind of business as usual for these guys, you know, the wise guys. In 1940, that's when the mob comes in, and they're going to kind of take over. It's going to be their way, and these little guys who are running the show are going to have to play ball or not play at all. One of the things here, the Newport and Covington, I told you they were split by a county line, and the Cleveland Syndicate wanted both of these clubs because they were really big, and so if there's heat in Newport, they just bring everything to Covington, and they would have one place at all times. So these weren't their clubs to begin with, so what they did, I already told you about Peter Schmidt, he went in, he fought the Syndicate, and finally they just took it away from him. He was left with nothing from this club. Jimmy Brinks, on the other hand, the Lookout House, thought about it, and he decided he was going to go ahead and give it up. And for it, he received 10% interest in both the Lookout and the Beverly Hills, and they gave him a $125,000 bonus for playing ball. So it's kind of a message that they sent to the local people that, you know, you can sign with us and we'll let you participate, or you can fight us and get nothing. The Yorkshire, that's a place with, it had an immense booking operation. I think that was their main reason for taking that. One kind of interesting story, 1946, a local mobster decided they were going to hold up the Yorkshire, so they went in and he, at gunpoint, took 25 grand from him. And the Cleveland Syndicate obviously didn't like that and didn't want people to think that was okay, so they sent a hitman out to kill him and his brother, who was connected with the Eastern Syndicate, and unfortunately they were only able to kill the brother. And to make sure that, you know, there was no retaliation, they decided to give up the hitman and had him killed, and everyone was delivered and everyone was happy. And I mean, that's one thing that I find interesting. Before, I would always think the mob, whatever they wanted, they got. And if they weren't going to get it, they were just going to kill them. But that's really not how it worked. I mean, these guys were businessmen. They know that killing someone, there's friends of other people, and there's police that are being bought by the people you're killing. So you never want to, that's almost a last resort. So in a lot of these things, I find that it's like, why didn't they just kill the guy and be done with it? But you know, these guys, they know that that's not good for business. So a lot of these stories will end with them negotiating, which I find just remarkable.
Ed, could I have it for a minute?
Please.
The thing that kept Newport going, even from the 1700s, the people that lived there wanted this. They all made a living off of this. All of the merchants did and everything. When he showed you those army tanks in there, that was the Kentucky National Guard. They were called into Newport 2 times, and the locals fought them both times. They did not want them there. So, and that went on until about 1959, when that was the beginning of the end, because the locals decided it should be time to change. Take it in.
Okay. Another club from the 40s, the Merchant Club. As Gene said, Albert Red Masterson, he was the enforcer for the syndicate. This was his headquarters. His job around town was to go and kind of clean up the bust-out joints and any place that was going to give the city a bad reputation. And there were quite a few of them.
Yeah.
And that was his job. And as Gene said, he was implicated in the Beverly Hills fire, allegedly. But
he came from Kansas City with his brother, who was Martin Miller, and they run this. When Danny was alive, my friend, he used to tell me how his dad taught Red Masterson how to use a machine gun.
One thing, Masterson and Peter Schmidt, who, I mean, they have always had a feud. I think this goes back even probably before the place burned down. I'm sure Masterson probably said he would do that job no problem. Peter Schmidt also had a bunch of the police force on his side, and of course the syndicate had a bunch on theirs, so that what they would do is just constantly raid each other's clubs. The Merchant Club was getting hit every other day that they weren't hitting Peter Schmidt's place, so those guys were always bucking heads. And again, that's one of those things where I just don't understand why someone just didn't take care of business. But you know, that was, you go and do something to Schmidt and you're going to get yourself all sorts of trouble. So it's almost like you deal with the nuisance more than you would take care of the problem. Let's see what we got next. The Latin Quarter started as the Primrose Country Club. Buck Brady was the owner, and this was another one where the syndicate comes in and they want the Primrose. So Buck refuses to sell and decides that he's going to send a message to the syndicate, and he puts out an attempted assassination on Red Masterson. That didn't work, and he was pretty much, you know, you didn't put him down, so now they're going to come after you. So this is another one of those things where he negotiated an early retirement to Florida in exchange for signing over the club, which I was completely surprised, but I mean, that's just what you do. So the Primrose, they renamed it the Latin Quarter, and it became a syndicate place. Here we go with Peter Schmidt again. His next venture is the Glenn Schmidt Playtorium, which was a bowling alley that he turned into a club and a restaurant. It was extremely popular. Of course, the syndicate came in again, wanted a piece of it, but he said no, and he just fought this one out, and just, this was his place that he kept, and he just dealt with the consequences of always being at war with them. But it was kind of one of those things where, you know, the guy finally, you know, dies of natural causes after fighting the mob for years and years, which is remarkable. So getting into the 50s, Gene, when is Gene going to be in these? When are you in Newport? The 60s, okay. All right, well, we got a little more. All right, well, we got the pressure starting to mount in the 50s. Estes Kefauver comes in with his special committee to investigate the crime. They go to 14 cities, and they bring in 600 witnesses. And what this does is goes on national TV, and it exposes all these cities, and the locals suddenly are thinking more than just these are getting us jobs, it's also getting us a reputation. So all of a sudden they're requiring that these people, the officials, actually do something about these clubs. So one thing that the syndicate does is they give up one of their clubs in kind of a media blitz. They, the Lookout House is raided, and this was, they knew it was coming, but they said, everything, I want all the equipment there, I want the people there, of course, except for Jimmy Brinks, he was absent this night. And the cops come in, they raid the place, of course, with a bunch of press and cameramen to show that they're doing something. And here's a picture of, as they're coming in. They burn on a big old pyre $20,000 worth of equipment, and of course, you know, making sure that everyone knows about it, publicity, and then they try to go about business as usual. And you know, no one can say that they're not doing something about the problem. But one thing oh, go ahead.
I want to say something about the Lookout House. What happened there, Mo Dalitz made a deal with the United States Senator. He would let stage this thing at the Lookout House and close it, but then he would not bother any other club in the area. They gave this to the government. Token, take this one, we'll keep the rest. And the government went for it. Go did.
It's better than nothing, I guess, huh? But one thing that does happen is all this negative press makes these guys, the Cleveland Syndicate, Mo, think, well, why are we doing this anymore? We've got Las Vegas, and Las Vegas needs money for, in particular, Wilbur Clark's Desert Inn needed a lot of money, so he went and gave them a bunch of money. And of course, one of the things that the Nevada regulation requires that he give up all his interest in these illegal clubs, which of course he said he did. I'm not quite sure, he probably did.
He more or less did it by 59. He was, because he knew the end was coming.
Okay. There was actually, and the influence in Vegas, I know that there's been a lot of, people thinking that there's probably more than just this. I found a couple examples of some things that I found interesting. The Silver Slipper, people thought maybe Silver Slipper in Vegas had some influence from the Kentucky, and here's the chip from the Silver Slipper in Kentucky. Looks a lot, who knows? It may. The Stardust, I love this. Here's a Stardust Las Vegas chip, and you compare that to the Stardust out of Kentucky. I mean, it's the exact same font. I mean, you even got, the 4 stars here and the 3 stars below. I mean.
All right. Both of these, the Silver Slipper and the Stardust in Kentucky, never had gambling. They did take the Stardust name off of that for use here because it was owned by the same people. But the Stardust and the Silver Slipper were both girly joints. That's what they were, gang. They were strip joints.
Yeah. I wonder, what were they using the chips for, you think?
The girls.
Okay. All right, well.
There's $500 Stardust chips.
Yeah? I wonder what you get for that. All right. So one thing that happens is in the 1950s when you've got the syndicate trying to get, not out of town, but they're kind of easing up a little bit because they're going into Vegas. You get a lot of these little joints that were pretty much controlled by the syndicate. The Heidi Ho Club here in Wilder was a notorious bust-out joint, and also a brothel that had a bit of a shady. They would
Trick rolls,
Gino's
blackmailing the people, the customers.
Yeah, they would roll the Johns and get personal information from them, and then they'd get a call a couple weeks later saying.
No, they had gambling. Those are gambling.
Yeah. So, but anyway, these, we kind of get back to the lawlessness where you don't have this unifying force anymore trying to keep people down, so you get more of this action. 1960, it's going to kind of come to a close here. One of the things, the Social Action Committee started, the clergy wanted to clean up the town. It started growing. United Sunday in 1961 is when the clergy from 4 counties were preaching against, and they passed the collection plate and the contributions poured in, and these guys were starting to put real pressure on the court system trying to get these guys indicted. But they were still kind of ununified and didn't really have a direction. So in comes George Ratterman here. He's he was a retired quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, family man. He took over the SAC, and he said that he was going to run for sheriff and he's going to clean up this town, which actually looked like it had some legs. And the syndicate decided that this guy was dangerous. So what they did is, and this is great. What they did is they tried to frame him, and they hired this Tito Carinci. Yeah, he was an acquaintance of George who called Ratterman up and said he wanted to go straight, and how could he do that? So George went to meet him, and what happened is he slipped him, this Tito slipped George a Mickey, and he passes out, and he wakes up, and he's in a seedy hotel room with this April Flowers, a stripper, which, incidentally, I found out that April Flowers is apparently the name of a current porn star when I was looking for pictures to put in here. I got some interesting things. I probably got some issues with my HR at work for what I'm pulling up. But anyway, so the police were called, and George Ratterman was arrested, and
That's not exactly the way it went, Ed.
okay, well then you tell us.
All right, Tito was running the Glen Rendezvous, and he changed the name to the Tropicana. Now, they had strippers and gambling both. They took the pictures. They called George and told him they had him and they were going to send him to his wife unless he laid off the sheriff running. Well, George bucked them. He didn't care what his wife saw. But they wasn't real. I mean, they dug him to do it. And that's how that all come about. Okay. Tito's still alive, as far as I know. He was 3 years ago. He owns a restaurant down in Phoenix, Arizona. And he's still alive. No, I don't know what's happened to him the last 3 years. I seen him in Newport 3 years ago.
So what happens is George goes and gets a toxicology report, and it's proven that he was drugged, and this set the town on fire. All of a sudden, these guys, with George Ratterman, he wanted justice, so they start indicting people, and all of a sudden, all the town's dirty laundry comes out. We've got judges, we got police chiefs, we got officers. Everyone is coming out, and everyone is getting hammered. And so this is just a complete backfire because Ratterman wins sheriff in 1961, no problem. And he goes about trying to close down these major clubs. And post-cleanup, I mean, everything that I read, George ran everybody out of town and cleaned up the whole thing, and that was it, right? No, I know it's not.
I'm trying to put this in perspective here. Like I said, the locals finally had enough, and they elected him. All the places closed for a while in 1961, late 61. That's when I got out of the Army and come into Newport. There was still crap games going on. Within 6 months, they started again. The Yorkshire ran all the way up into the 70s with crap games and blackjack games. The merchants never did have any more. The cigar store had crap games. You had another one up there a minute ago that had it too, and I forgot. But there was still, it was minor. It was practically nothing compared to what it was. But like I say, the Yorkshire ran all the way up to about 75. Sammy Wright was running it. He was another killer for the outfit. And he got too old to be killing people. Open a club. It's just the way it went.
So that's going to wrap up Newport, I think, for me. Gene, you have anything else to add for your hometown? I think we'll go on now to researching illegal clubs. Gene has, like Rick said in the intro, I mean, he's been kind of running the show with this illegal of the day action. It's just some absolutely fascinating histories, and the main question I get is how do we do that? And Gene's got some guys working for him that are just, well, they seem like they can just find anything.
I researched and got a lot of this information for years and years on the telephone, calling libraries and blah, blah, blah. And when my friend volunteered and I seen he could get as much as I got, but he got the newspaper articles to go with it and all of the Kefauver reports and everything. I'm not as adept with a computer as some of these people are. I get it around, but I've never tried to get into a lot of these databases that's on there. So what he gets, and then he adds pictures to it, is what makes the illegals of the day what they are.
So, so what I thought I'd do is kind of go through what some of the steps I go through, and I've asked some of the guys that help Gene out what they use, and I was actually pretty surprised by it because I thought for sure, I mean, if you've read those, you know how in-depth they get. It's incredible what he can find. I thought he worked for the CIA or he was a journalist. No, I really did. I thought he had data. I thought he had databases that no one could get into, but apparently what I found was that's not the case. So I think one of the most important things is you have to have a starting point for attributing chips. And I get questions a lot where there'll be some small key chip with just 2 initials on it. And they said, how can I research this chip? And that's all they have. And they've got nothing else. And the problem is without a starting point, there's really absolutely nothing you can do. I've got hundreds and thousands of chips that I'll just never know anything about because we don't have records for them. But if you do have the starting point, this is kind of what we can do to go through. One of the best sites, of course, Gene and David Sprague have put online this Preserving Gaming History, which has the chip records for a lot of these manufacturers, Taylor and Company, the Jones chips, Hunt. We got some Hunt records and some Edwards. But I'm sure most of you have seen this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. This is the first screen you go to. If you say looking for Taylor, you'd click that. You get the screen. You get your alphabet there. And this is just an example of maybe one chip you'll have. They've got a name, an address, and what chips were ordered. And sometimes the information is better than others, and like this one has everything in it. I don't even think I know of this chip existing. No, I don't. This is just an example. I don't think I have any of those either. But this would be a great starting point. And a lot of people, if they get this far, and that's it. That's all they want. I got a name of a club. I got a year, and I got a city. But if you're really wanting to go dig deeper, this kind of information is what you need to start with. You've got a name.
That's not enough for me.
No. This is a good starting point. And a lot of times you'll hardly even get this. I'm going to go through a few examples after I go through kind of some of this stuff. The second thing, gaming table, it's got a lot of those chip records in, plus it's got a lot of the attributions that people have made over the years. That's a second place to start, and I think the third best place is the chipboard online. You can just post it, put a picture, and say, does anyone know anything about this chip? And maybe they don't know where it's from, but maybe they'll say, yeah, I found that in Tampa, Florida or something, and maybe it gives something. But those are the 3 places I think that are good starting points for if you've got a chip. So after you've got your starting point, going through the research, there's a few kind of tranches that you can use. Now, to start with the free internet research, Google's the best thing to start with. If you've got a name of a person or a city or a club, Google it, see if there's something out there. Who knows? Gene may have an article that's already posted all about it, or sometimes it'll point you in a direction to get you started. These digitized newspapers are also very useful. The thing that I found with them, unfortunately, is there's not one place that has all the newspapers. A lot of these sites I've got here, there's like a portal for Texas history that's got a bunch of old Texas things, Texas newspapers. Utah has a site, but a lot of times, sometimes you'll even have to go to the certain newspapers, and maybe they have archives, but unfortunately there's not a lot. There's some city directories that are online, and there's 2 big, the archive.org and the Library of Congress. The digital collections also have a bunch of newspapers available for free. The Library of Congress, I think, has 600 and around 970 newspapers. Unfortunately, a lot of those only go up into the 20s, so it usually predates most of what we're looking for. Archive.org has a bunch of newspapers, though, and they're indexed pretty good, so you can sometimes find something there. The second thing are the pay sites. I actually use newspaperarchive.com. I think it's okay. I've actually been able to find a bunch of stuff on there. Our Gene's friend of the hobby uses Ancestor.com and Fold3.com. I've never actually used Fold3, but I think in a lot of his histories, he'll tell you that this, his father was an immigrant that came over, and he's got all this personal history about these club owners, and I think that's where he's getting most of his information is this kind of stuff. Digging deeper, this is what really surprised me the most. When I asked him, I said, how are you finding this information? Because I can't find it. And he says that the libraries are his main source of information. First, his local library. You get a library card for the state you're in, and they're actually set up on a bunch of online databases and that access it that you can't get without a membership. And you also have the librarian assistants, and that's where he starts most of his work. But then what that takes him to is the...
It's how they get a library card.
Well, yeah. You get a library card and use their terminals and see what you can find. But most of the research that you'll get are from the local libraries of the city you're researching. You've got city, and a lot of this stuff is on microfilm and microfiche, and it's not online, but they have access to it. So you've got old city directories that'll tell you, if you've just maybe had just an address, they'll tell you what clubs were there, when those clubs came and went. A lot of these local libraries will have local newspapers that you're not going to find anywhere else. And you're also going to have librarians who know that area and who know what they have and can help you. And I've I did one quick example. I actually picked this at random. I just found a club with a city that I didn't know, Cleveland, Mississippi, this Delta Club. So I just Googled Cleveland, Mississippi library. It comes up with this Bolivar County library system. I go to it, and I find down here they got local history and genealogy collection. I go to it, and here's where it's got, the newspapers that they have. Now these are all on microfiche, so you can't get it online, but you email these people and just ask them, if you ask them specific questions, I mean, if you can't say, hey, can you pull me everything from this person, but if you just ask them questions, kind of general, I know that if you ask them kind of in the lines that you're looking at genealogy type thing, they're usually pretty nice about helping out. And one of the examples I have that I did just for the show, I actually used a local library, and they sent me some stuff, and I'll show you that. But
When I was calling the libraries, I never found one that wouldn't help me. They would all research for you and get back to you. I just never had a bad thing. I was on the telephone doing it, where he's doing it, email in there.
right, but I think if you send them a list of 20 clubs and give me everything you want, they would probably yeah. If you were nice about it and just was looking for something specific, I think these people may help. No, please.
I used to tell them I'd buy them dinner when they come to Las Vegas.
Have you ever had to?
Once.
Oh, really? Okay. So I thought I'd go through just, I think, two examples here. These are actual research that I have done. This one is a couple years old, and Gene's done a illegal of the day on it since then, but this was back before that would happen. I got this one chip, STC. It was unknown until we got the records for it, and you can look it up. It's Irvin Gibbs from Jeffersonville, Indiana. But that's it. There was no club, there's a year, and there's a name, but that's actually really good information. So a few years ago, when I tried to Google the name, I got nothing. Now, if you Google it, you'll get your illegal of the day, and there's more information you never need. But at the time, there was nothing. So what I did is I used my newspaper archives, and there's a whole bunch of filters, and sometimes you got to play around because you'll get thousands of hits if you're not careful. So I put Gibbs, Jeffersonville, and I put gambling, just see if I could get a hit. And actually what pulls up is this Tipton Tribune from Indiana, and it tells you the key words that it's finding. So I pull it up, and I get 3 gaming houses raided. And this is the whole newspaper comes up, but this is just the one little article that I pull. And in it, you've got the racket-busting judge. He's on a gaming warpath. Down here, you've got your Irvin Gibbs and this other guy are held in charge of operating in a gambling house. And one of the places raided is the Shady Terrace Club on the State Road 62. And this article is a year after those chips were ordered. So with that information, we were able to get the Shady Terrace Club. It was on State Road 2, Jeffersonville. You got the operator. Chips were ordered in 46. You don't know if that's actually the starting year of the club. It was rated in 47. That's the last time that I had found anything that go with it. So those are just 2 points that we know it was operating. Don't know if that's the starting or ending point. These 2 chips, cord mold chips, were also found with those. I would say they're probably good. Gene would say no. Wow.
Yes, and there's a small Greek key, which we can't verify, but it certainly fits the puzzle.
All right, well, look out for that. Okay, so anyway, that's how I went researching this one. Gene's guy went through and probably has 6 pages of information on it. So that's as far as I went with this. So let's just go through an example. Number 2, this is a little hard to read. It says P&C, it's a $1 in trade chip. We can pull the hub mold records at one time. I pulled this a while ago, and what I get is Peterson and Cooksey from Tacoma, Washington, 1936. For a lot of people, that's probably enough, if that's what they want, and they'll usually I'll get Peterson and Cooksey Club, and it's like, well, I don't know about that. So what I'm going to do is research this further. I actually just do the quick Google search, and I get this Peterson and Cooksey billiard parlor from the Tacoma Library, which is, a remarkable getting that first hit. So I go to it. It's their public library, and they've actually got a lot of stuff online. And one thing down here, it talks about the club, but you pull up the picture, and here's actual, I think this was, let's see what year this was. That was, yeah, that was from 1924. I love these old cars. Yeah, you've got actually a billiard parlor here right next to it, but this is the Cooksey and Peterson billiards, and it's on the 2nd floor. And I just think that's a really neat picture. So then you go to another part of this library, and they've got indexed all the. It's an index of the articles they have on microfiche, but you can't get the actual article. One of them here is on the Cooksey and Peterson, or the Peterson and Cooksey billiard parlor, and there was a holdup on one of their safes, and another one down here has Cooksey again, but this time it's with Shields, 1946, and there's a surprise raid going on. So what I had to do next is contact the librarian, and I had to ask her, first of all, this TDL is the Tacoma Daily Ledger, and the TNT is the Tacoma News Tribune. And I asked her, very politely, just, if she could maybe look up, well, I think I asked her what the rate charge was for her to actually do the lookup. And about an hour later, I got 2 emails, and both of these were attached to it. The one was an article. There's not a whole lot in here. There was $1,000 that was taken from this club. One thing I did get was James Cooksey, so I do have a name, first name, with Cooksey. There's not a whole lot more information. And the second article, Cooksey has now, Cooksey and Shields, he's teamed up with someone else, and they have another tavern at 941 Commerce. And this was raided with a lot of other places, Turf Smoke Shop, there's some matchbooks with that. I think there's a few chips, but one thing that this did is it helped me identify a trade token I had of the Cooksey and Shields at that address. And so now I can say that this was used in a illegal gambling place that I didn't know before. So that was kind of just, these were real quick examples. And this thing really took me probably 20 minutes to get all this information, plus, you know, the time it took for her to get stuff back. But it's pretty easy to do. I don't think it's very intimidating. I thought it would be when, you know, the information your guy gets, I'm sure he spends hours and hours on.
Them actual links he sent us help.
Yeah, we could. He sent a.
I've got a bunch of links that when we asked for how we can do this. If anybody wants them, email me and I'll mail them to you. But it's quite a few links that he uses for research. So if he can do it, we can do it.
I think most of the links were at the beginning where I showed the Library of Congress and everything, but he said he would say some examples of a few newspapers, but they were more like, oh, well, if you know, there's some from LA and Cleveland, and I think they were mostly examples. Most of the links were on the newspaper archive and the Library of Congress and that kind of stuff. But Gene, do you have anything else you want to add to the discussion on research? I think I'm about it.
It's just, if you've got a starting point, it's out there, you can find it, but a starting point is not three initials on a chip. Where are you going with that? We just started with one that two different chips. I got a story coming on them on the internet or on the boards. But where they were found, this city, and we had the name of a club. We took that and turned it into 2 new IDs, and there's actually 3 more clubs. I haven't checked to see if they had a gaming table. It's mentioned in this thing. That's on the Last Resort, the Last Frontier Club. They're out of Idaho, but they found the chips, and we took the city and just started with them, and we got good information back. So. But a starting point, like it's on their records, or the last one is where they were found. And that worked this time, but that won't work all the time because chips travel in this flea market circuit around the world. So.
Yeah, I think that's important too, because a lot of times I get like the initial chips and it'll have CC on it or something, and they'll say, well, I found this in, I found it in Cleveland, Ohio. And they said, well, there was a Copa Club, maybe that's it. And so they'll research the Copa Club and find it did have gambling, and then all of a sudden, oh, well, maybe this goes with it. But you can't make that leap. You can prove that the Copa Club had gambling maybe, but you can never prove that CC diamond mold chip actually came from there. And I think that's the leaps that we have the most trouble with, is just finding a bunch of chips and knowing that you probably never be able to put it to a club. But if you're just interested in the history, I mean, I think that's really what these, illegal chips, I mean, that's what's interesting about them. Because the chips themselves, actually, this is a funny story. I don't think I've ever told anyone. This is how I got started in illegal collecting. Is, this was 18 years ago. We're on the Prodigy and the CompuServe bulletin boards back in the old days, back before we had all this internet stuff. And I'm collecting all these limited edition, these bright, beautiful chips. And I get an email from Michael Knapp. And he goes, Ed, you're in Houston. Galveston, right next door, they had a lot of illegal gambling. Are you into that? And I'm like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Knew nothing. He goes, well, you want me to send you some chips? And I said, oh, that'd be great. So he sends me chips, and I open them up and look at them. And I don't think I've ever been more disappointed with chips I got, because they were ugly. They were just hot stamped and cigarette burns on them. And I'm like, oh, gee, you know, because I'm used to these beautiful chips. And then he says, okay, well, here's a little history on it. And he wrote a couple pages of history and gave me some books to look up. And I started doing that, and then I was hooked. That was it. There was nothing else but these illegal chips, because the history is just fantastic. But, you know, the chips, you know, they're not, well, some of them are beautiful. I mean, we've got great illegal chips. Michael didn't send me any of those, but but no, that was my love affair. Yeah, my love affair was on the history of the chips, and I think that's really what's most important about this. And I hope, you know, people can use some of this information and start. If you find out something, you know, post it, let us all know about it, because I know that's my passion, and I hope that we can continue finding more information and chips.
Is that all you got to go there? You put the Chivagos? Okay, all right. Somebody asked me to tell a story that I told him, and I've told it a few times. I don't know who I told it to, but I'm going to tell it again. 1963, Screw Andrews went to Terre Haute for a little federally funded vacation.
Testing.
Oh, real nice. So me and two guys he asked us to put a bingo in the Sportsman's Club. Sportsman's is a big, beautiful club. And no other gambling, just a bingo. So anyhow, as it turns out, you have to have a charity. They got to be a charity bingo. They got to get some money. So we found a black preacher. We called him the Rev. What else? And we didn't give away a lot of money at this bingo. We won a lot of these games ourselves, thanks to Cy Andrews, Screw's brother. He would come in with us and help us win our own games. But anyhow, we decided to give a car away. Play bingo for a month. You get a ticket every time. And then we're going to have a big thing outside and draw for this car. Not sure we don't want to give this car away. So we got the Rev in. And Cy Andrews taught him to draw the ticket out of the drum. Okay, so now we can win our own car. We get our ticket. Day of the drawing, there's 150 people out there at that drawing. And the Rev makes a big deal, and he draws the ticket, and his sister won the car. We had no choice but to give it to her. It was a brand new Ford. The Ford, back in those days, you could buy them for about $1,400 if I remember right. The new car dealer was right across the street. The Rev's sister won the damn car.
Nice. Now we do have a little giveaway, or not giveaway, but little freebies here. Some of them were from last year, but I did bring a new chip that I just found. Just real quick, Havana, Illinois was big illegal gambling, sitting up there just north of Springfield. The guy on the right there is Frank Lawson-Shago, and Gene did a big thing on Havana just a few months ago, and this was one of the clubs in there. From the 1930s and 1960s, downtown Havana, the Shago had his place. It was the Shago Club, but one thing that was pretty funny was this article, and Earl Shago is a relative of Frank's, and you know, they're sitting there and they hear a pig squealing, and they're like, what is that? They look up, and in the talons of an eagle is a little baby piglet flying over them. And so that this article proved that pigs do fly, and so these chips are really important. I think it's kind of funny that they shot the eagle down. I don't know if that saved the pig or not, but anyway, I've got this 25-cent chip. There's plenty here. I brought a whole bunch, so there's enough for everyone. And we've got some other chips to give away. And do we want questions or?
We'll have some questions. When you come up, there's, I don't know, 8 or 10 different chips here. I think there's enough for everybody to get one each, except for the one, and it's a Washington chip. But I think everybody can get one of each. There's a good Illinois illegal there. There's a Kentucky. I think all of these have been in the illegal of the day. Now, if you can't find it on the board, it's on a site. It's got my name on it. Just Google Gene Trimble. And every one of the illegal days are on that by state and by what's on the chip. So you don't have to hunt through the chipboard archives for them.
All right.